What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Cervantes Podcast. Joining me today to discuss the history of Islamophobia in the United States, the anti-hijab protests following the death of Mahsa Amini, and misconceptions about the religion of Islam is law student at the Maurice A. Dean School of Law at Hofstra University, Iman Elshazly. Iman also has a bachelor's degree in psychology and political science from Hofstra, and you guys should remember her from episode 18, Free Palestine, back in June of 2021. Iman, how are you doing today? So glad to have you back on the podcast.
I'm really happy to be here again. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Okay, so my first question for you, what is your background and did you grow up always having a sense of pride in your Muslim identity?
Yeah, so I grew up in New Jersey my whole life. And in New Jersey, there is a pretty large Muslim community. New Jersey is really good in that there's so much diversity everywhere. There's, a lot, not only in race and ethnicity and different cultures and different backgrounds, but also in religious diversity. So growing up, I definitely was pretty prideful in who I was as a Muslim, even though in certain years of growing up, I had to go to public school, which in a majority of these public schools they were uh, majority white, majority Christian, majority Catholic. So I had to try to maintain that kind of pride and that kind of you know um, I guess being close to my Muslim identity during those times. And I would never really feel upset about being Muslim. Like some people might be like, I wish I was like everyone else. But I didn't really feel that way. I was just like, I'm happy being who I am. I'm happy being in this religion that I grew up learning about more and more about my entire life. Um, so that was something that I did take a lot of pride in. And it was kind of funny when I was younger and I didn't really know any better. I was like trying to like tell my classmates all about it. Because sometimes they would be like, they would have these like backwards beliefs, like, don't you have to like be sold for a camel when you get married or something? I was like, what? What are you talking about? They
The
would say
things that we
some,
hear about other communities, and like it's like where do
yeah,
we get that from? It's like TV, sometimes our parents, like ignorant people, the internet sometimes.
that's
So
so true.
that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. What
So
oh
yeah, I
sorry.
would have to. No, you're good. I was about to finish. I would like sometimes I had to be able to dispel those kinds of beliefs. And I feel like people growing up in different minority backgrounds, you always feel like you have to have this responsibility on your shoulders, but always not only be educated on everything that your minority group is, I don't know, struggling with or have struggled with or facts. It's like you have to be this walking encyclopedia of, oh, I know everything about my heritage and my religion and my background. For people who are ignorant and don't know any better, you feel like, oh, I'm responsible to tell them and educate them. And I mean, we shouldn't feel that way. But when I was younger, I was like always feeling that way, you
Right.
know?
And then people will think that like, oh, I met Iman. So this is what all Muslims are like because I met one Muslim. And it's like
Yeah.
that's not how it works.
No, it's
There's
not.
different I just had an episode about anti-Semitism and about diversity within the Jewish community and how there's
Yeah.
different sects and like there's reform and conservative and there's also
Yeah.
Hasidic and Ashkenazi. So I wanted to ask you like what are the different sects and denominations in Islam?
So I don't know all of them, but I do. There's mainly, you've probably heard this before. There's majority of the Muslim community around the globe is Sunni, and another majority is like Shia, which
Okay,
they believe different things about. See, I wish I really knew like all the details, but there's so many more sects besides that I don't even know about. But I think one of the most unique things about Islam as an Abrahamic religion, meaning, descendants from Abraham, just like Judaism, just like Christianity, and just like Islam, those three are the Abrahamic religions.
right.
Um, we basically all believe the same thing, essentially,
If you
but
really think
just
about it,
different details.
right.
The thing about Islam is that there's not as many different sects as there is in Judaism and in Christianity. Um, we majorly kind of just believe the same thing, just with a few different details aligning from differently from that. I believe the Sunnis believe that the caliphate, it was descendant from a certain person, but the Shias believe that Muhammad, our last prophet, peace be upon him, his, I guess, leadership should have went to somebody else as a different
Okay.
caliph. I think that's what it's supposed to be. I have to brush up on it, I wish.
Okay.
But
But
that's,
thank you for
yeah.
breaking that down a little bit. How do you identify in your Muslim identity?
So as a Muslim, I identify as a Sunni. So that's kind of, I believe, a very large percentage of Muslims around the world identify as Sunni, which is, everything went the way it was supposed to be. The caliphate, which is the four people who took on leadership of Islam, not Islam, but like, I guess, Muslims in the Arab Peninsula after Muhammad, peace be upon him, his death. Everything went the way it was supposed to be, and we're supposed to only worship one God. Oh, actually, if I could just bring something up, I feel like a lot of people have this like belief that like Allah is like a different God than what other
Yes,
people believe, and
and it
that's not
isn't.
true. Even Arab Christians in the Middle East, they say Allah because it just means God in Arabic, you know?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of people are
Exactly.
like, I don't care who you believe in, if you believe in God or Allah. Like, it's the same thing. It's
It's the
God.
same thing. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. And it's also interesting too, like I was in doing research for this episode, I saw that like women in each of the three Abrahamic religions, they all covered
Their
their head,
heads. Yeah.
you know, like even nuns, it's a different covering, but it's still similar. So I think it's very interesting why how do I say it? We think of each other as different, but we're much more alike, like you said, than we are different. So I think
Of
that's very,
course.
very interesting. What is your ethnicity? What country are you from? Oh, your
So,
parents.
yeah, yeah. So both of my parents are Egyptian. So my mom was born here, but both of her parents were from Egypt and traveled over here. My dad was born in Egypt, in Cairo, and he came over here when he was about 18, 19. And yeah, I really thought, I took a DNA test actually like a couple of months ago. And I was like, I
Okay.
thought it was gonna be like 100% Egyptian. I was like, I'm 100% Egyptian. And I was so surprised when there was so much like diversity just in Africa. Like I was like 60% Egyptian, and like
Wow.
another like 12% was from West Africa, and then another 12% was like the Arab Peninsula. Another percentage was like from the Levant, which is like this small area right above Saudi Arabia, which is consists of Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, and Syria.
Okay.
So yeah, I was like, oh my God,
That's so
no way.
cool. That's so cool. No, I think
Oh
sometimes people think like we're 100% of whatever we know we are the most.
yeah,
Um, and it's like, oh no, we're actually much more mixed than we thought we were. That's so
I was really
interesting.
surprised.
I think probably because of colonization. Probably
Yeah,
because of that.
yeah.
And
I
just
mean,
mixing, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I really kind of struggle kind of with being invisible, like with my North African identity. Like when I fill out any form of like demographic, I guess like questionnaire, like, what's your race or ethnicity? They never, almost never have Middle Eastern, Southwest Asian, North African. Never. You have to
No.
either pick. I mean, for some people, like some people who are born in, let's say, like Afghanistan or Iraq, you could say Asian because that's in Asia. It's just like in a different section of Asia.
Right.
But for people who are North African or like Egyptian, Moroccan, Libyan, Algerian, what are we supposed to say? We can't say African American. We're not black. So it's like,
Right.
you know
And
what
you
I
can't
mean?
say white unless you maybe look
Yeah.
white or perceived as white. So that's difficult. I think they definitely need to. Sometimes you fill out a job application and I see like 10 different categories. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. Hopefully everyone is represented here. But in some
Yeah.
categories, it's kind of like black, white, Asian, Hispanic. Like pick one or other. And then that kind of feels
Other.
that feels
Mm.
like it doesn't feel what do you call it? You feel like an other. You don't feel like a part of the world. So they definitely need to be more inclusive in the category for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what was I gonna say? I feel like a lot of people just in general, they have these views about these diverse continents like Asia, like Africa. If you're from Asia, you have to look a certain way. If you're from Africa, you have to have dark skin. Like, do you know, like Africa is the most diverse continent on planet Earth. Thousands of languages are spoken there. There are thousands of cultures within Africa, and no two people are going to look exactly the same from different regions of Africa. I mean, there are people in Egypt who are Black, who are also North African, who are also Egyptian, meaning like Arab. Like you could be a multitude of different ethnicities and identify with different cultures. I feel like a lot of people think, you know, it's one way. You have to only look one way and only be from one culture, and that's it.
And that's
You
not
know?
true. That's not true. It's kind of like I don't know if you see Mean Girls, where that scene where Katie comes and I
Yeah.
forgot her name, but the blonde character's like, "You're from Africa?" And she's like,
You're
"Yeah,
white.
but you're
Why are
white."
you white? Yeah.
It's kind of like that. But no, yeah, not everyone in Africa looks like me. Like there's many different, like you said,
Definitely.
ethnicities, and I think again, it goes. I always say this. It goes back to representation. We have to have more representation on screen of different African people and positive representation, not just, for
Yeah.
5 cents a day, like you like not just like
Mm-hmm.
those sad commercials. It should be well versed so people know what many different types of Egyptians look like in Nigeria and Kenya and so it
Yeah.
goes I think it goes back to the lens that Africa's viewed in America and how we portray that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Even Egyptian people in Egypt are so diverse. There could be people with very dark skin, with very like, you know, certain 4C hair. And then on the other side, you could see someone else who's blonde, blue eyes, who's also Egyptian. Like it's crazy.
Right. And people don't realize how like big Africa is. Like I think all of
Hmm.
China can fit in it. All of the United States can fit in it. Like it's a very big country, but people think of it's a big continent, but people think that it's not as big as it really is. So and I
Yeah.
think people are just not we're not educated on it enough in schools. Like in the
Yeah.
curriculum. I think we spend like 2 minutes on it and then move on to Europe or something
Yeah.
else. So that's so true. So my next question for you. The late Somalian Muslim journalist Hana Yusuf spoke in a 2016 video for The Guardian about how the hijab is a feminist statement and does not have anything to do with oppression. She says many women find empowerment in rejecting the idea that women can be reduced to their sexual allure, and we should not assume that every woman who wears a hijab has been forced into it. Why do you think some people say that the religion of Islam and or Muslim culture is oppressive to women?
Man, I could talk about that for hours.
Okay, so you're passionate about this.
You know? Not only passionate, but there's so much that goes into it, you know? Like so many different aspects. Okay. I want to
Trying to
start.
see
I want
where
to
to
start.
attack it.
Good start. So I agree with her, obviously. I mean, I feel like not only what's happening in Iran right now is fueling that kind of a notion that women are only forced to wear hijab. And I think a lot of people have these misconceptions about if a certain country or if different countries, they don't understand that they use Islam as an excuse to oppress people, to oppress women, to have these deeply upsetting and conservative views. They just weaponize Islam. And not a lot of people get that. They just think, oh, they're Muslim and they're doing these things. So that means that Islam is bad and Islam is doing those things. And it's like, no, like that could not be further from Islam, which is a religion of peace. And people try to blend in Islam and these cultures that are weaponizing it in their governments, in their oppressive dictatorships, to be like, well, yeah, that's what all Muslims think. And that's what all Muslim women have to do. And the government of Iran has been doing this for so many years, and it has nothing to do with Islam. I mean, I feel like people also don't see that it also happens over here in our government, just with Christianity. But no
Right.
one points to Christians and say, well, they all think this way, and they all want women to be oppressed. No, there's just a government that's using this, weaponizing these beliefs to oppress women, like abortion in the United States. And that could not
Right.
be further from, I'm sure, what a lot of Christians believe, because, a lot of Christians don't all believe the same exact thing.
We have
But
so
I
much
mean,
nuance for Christians. We give Christianity so much nuance, but we don't give the same nuance to Islam
yeah. I mean, I
and
saw
Muslim
this
people.
video, exactly. I saw this video the other day of this sheikh who's like, I guess, kind of like a religious figure in Islam. He was just standing on the street answering questions from different people, and this one old man came up to him and said, "Why does your religion promote violence? Why are you all so violent?" And the sheikh he went and he asked him, "Okay, well, okay, who did the Spanish Inquisition? Was that Muslims?" And he's like, "Oh no, that was Christians who did that." "Okay, who started World War I and World War II? Who did that? What kind of nations did that? Christian nations in Europe." So the guy, he went, he said, "Why do you assume automatically when certain governments, when certain countries, under the guise of Islam, not really Islam, try to be violent, they do these awful things, you automatically turn around and point to all Muslims and say, you're all violent, you're all evil. But when Christians do it, or when any other religion, under the guise of Christianity, like even like the KKK, ultra nationalist, ultra conservative Christians doing these heinous things in the name of Christianity, which is not Christian at all, automatically you just say, well, those aren't what Christians do. It's just people. So those are also people just trying to act a certain way, using Islam as a weapon, which is not what Islam stands for at all. I feel like in Iran, even now, I really, my heart really goes out to all the people, not just the women who are forced to wear hijab, but just everyone under that oppressive regime, because that is not what Islam is. In Islam, you wear the hijab to be modest, to keep yourself in the name of God, like what other women do in Judaism and Christianity, to cover your hair, to keep modesty, and to keep your faith in the name of God. That's what it's supposed to be, and it's not supposed to be forced on you. But because
Exactly.
also, even also because of like these like stereotypical, caricatures that we see in TV that have the same exact like beliefs as certain American people, they also like enforce that stereotype. Women are forced to do this. They're supposed to be slaves to their husbands. They're supposed to get married when they're like 5 years old. It's like that's not what Islam is at all. Islam doesn't do that. If there are cultures that do that in the name of Islam, they're wrong. And obviously, there are a lot of cultures or a lot of people who wrongly do those things. And we just love to label them with stereotypes and say all Muslims do that. That's what
And
Islam
paint
is.
with such a
That's
broad
what it is.
stroke.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so dangerous because you have Americans who are like, oh my God, like, why is quote unquote Islam so oppressive? And it's like, wait, no, it's the country. It's a specific country or a specific culture, but not the religion. Like it's very good. I'm glad that you broke that down because
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that. I don't think enough Americans, maybe I should say, understand the nuance and everything that you just said. So I think that was really important. And again, people are not educated. We're not educated enough on this about schools. We're not really allowed, I think, to learn about different religions in public school.
Yeah.
And then in private school, I did what I like about my high school, we spent like about 4 weeks on a new religion. So we learned about Christianity. I went to Catholic school and learned about Christianity first, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. I thought that was amazing. But I know
Wow.
not everyone has that education, you know. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think that's important. And read books, watch documentaries, speak to your nice Muslim friends,
Yeah.
ask some
Do
questions,
research.
do your own research, right? Because we don't want to
Yeah.
treat people like they're Google. But definitely do your research, read books. Google's free, and
Mm.
I feel like I learned a lot doing my research for this episode. Like, wow, I didn't know this, I
Yeah.
didn't know that, and talking to intelligent people like you about your own community so you can dispel these stereotypes and these all this misinformation that's
Yeah,
spread by dangerous people and ignorant people who just don't even know.
exactly. And the thing that's so dangerous about these kinds of beliefs that you just mentioned is like just as it affects Muslims who live in America, not only like in the social sense, but like dangerously. There are people who believe these kinds of things and then go and they burn down mosques, they shoot up mosques. Just like what happened in New Zealand, just like what happened, I can't even remember, like a few months ago, someone went and shot up a mosque in the United States. They
Right.
went and they wanted to, like, it's so dangerous, just as it is anti-Semitism for Jewish people, because people really believe these kinds of evil stereotypes, like, oh, people they run the world, whatever, which is obviously absolutely not true. So they go and they want to do these dangerous things to Jewish people because of what they believe. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand how dangerous that pipeline is. First, you start thinking that a certain religious group do this, and then, the worse you go, you want them all to be dead. You want them to die. And there are so many people just because they believe these absolutely false notions about different religious people, like Jewish people or Muslim people, they want to do dangerous things. They
Burning
rally
mosques,
against them, burning the Quran, our holy
throwing
book. That just
throwing
happened in
acid.
Sweden. Yeah.
So shortly after Al-Qaeda terrorists attacked the Twin Towers on September 11, 2001, and the Pentagon, many Muslims as well as other Arab Americans became the targets of anger and racism. According to a 2021 article from ABC News by Kiara Alfonseca titled 20 Years After 9/11, Islamophobia Continues to Haunt Muslims, she reported that mosques were burned or destroyed like we spoke about, and death threats and harassment followed many Muslims in the weeks following the attacks. According to congressional testimony from the Southern Poverty Law Center in 2011, some victims were beaten, attacked, or held at gunpoint for merely being perceived as Muslim, the organization said. Growing up, did you encounter a lot of Islamophobia or maybe your family due to 9/11?
I feel like for me, it wasn't the dangerous kind, like I just spoke about. And I feel like that's what a lot of Muslims encounter. I feel like for a lot of minority groups nowadays, it's this quiet hatred. You don't really see people throw slurs at you, but you could tell. You know what I'm
Dirty
saying? Like
looks?
you can tell. I feel like every day when I was like in fifth grade, like growing up in public school, on like the anniversary of 9/11, I feel like, I would just be like given these dirty looks, like, or just like treated quietly or like treated like invisible. I feel like growing up, that's what I was faced a lot. It's not this like outward hatred or this outward, I don't anger, but it's more of like this quiet ignorance. And I feel like that's really what gets you because you can't really say anything because no one's really saying anything to you, but you can tell they think certain things, but
Based
you
on how they
can't do
treat
anything.
you, how they look at you. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so true. I can totally relate to that. I
I
feel like
think
my
that's
community can relate, would say the same.
yeah. I mean, a lot of communities who are subject to scrutiny or complete stereotypical views have to endure that growing up. I mean, there are other people who face even worse, getting called slurs or straight up to their faces said certain things. But I mean, I didn't face that, which I feel like someone said it before. I would rather be told to my face, racist or stereotypical things than it be quietly there. And I kind of agree. I feel like I'd rather that because then I know for sure what you think of me, you
Right.
know?
And I won't be surprised later.
Yeah.
That's so true. I completely agree with that. Muslim people are severely underrepresented on television. According to a 2022 article from CNN, researchers from the University of Southern California's Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism analyzed over 200 TV series that aired between 2018 and 2019, hoping to understand how Muslims were portrayed on popular shows. They found that only 1% of speaking characters are Muslim, whereas 25% of the world's population is Muslim. And across the 200 TV series, only 12 series regulars were Muslim, the study found. Seven of those Muslim series regulars were perpetrators or targets of physical violence. part of the pervasive stereotyping of Muslim characters, according to the researchers. Despite this, we have seen some great strides in the Muslim community. Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib became the first two Muslim women to serve in Congress. Ibtihaj Muhammad became the first Muslim American woman to wear a headscarf while competing for the United States Olympics. Comedian Rami Youssef's series Rami became the first Muslim American sitcom to score an Emmy nomination, and the comedian won a Golden Globe for Best Performance in a Television Series. Are there things improving for Muslim Americans? And is Muslim representation on screen improving?
Um, I feel like when you brought that up, the thing with like Muslim representation is that if it's there, which it rarely is, like I can't even think, like as much as like different things like it for other religions, they have like different celebrations of their holidays, different, educational aspects of what they do, like bar mitzvahs, Christmas, different things like that. But for Muslims, there's not really much of that, even like the background stuff. But for those that are there, an even slimmer percentage of those are just stereotypical, completely inaccurate, representations of Muslims. Like even like in comedy, in dramas, sometimes in dramas. I think one of the best what I was thinking about from representations of Muslims is I don't know if you watch Euphoria, but Ali. I really like his character, and
Okay,
him as a Muslim, he puts forward this good perspective of I did bad things in my past, but you know what? I'm moving forward and I'm becoming a better person, which is kind of, what Islam's also all about. It doesn't have to be like this person who's like a complete religious person and that's it, a one-dimensional character. But we want someone who with nuance, who, shows what it's like to be a Muslim. And I think a lot of like, I feel like, a lot of people joke like with hijabi representation, it's even smaller. When I see hijabis on screen, they're usually like just background characters, or they have like one line, you know, and
right.
with the hijabis who have TV shows like on Netflix, they do this thing all the time where they like take it off. They're like, I'm not, you know what? I'm done with this. They take it off, or they have like her fall in love with this guy, this white guy, who like she takes off her hijab for, or like something like that. Like it's just like it's always like this subliminal messaging, like it's so oppressive, and she's so happy that she's now in American culture, like
And
But
that sets what we were talking about before, like a false idea of what Islam is, you know?
exactly. And with the good representation, like I could think of like Miss Marvel, that was good. I liked how she was just someone who had different facets of her character. Not only was she Muslim, but she was someone who wanted to be a hero. She's someone who was kind of a nerd, who had like this really like, bubbly and fun personality. Like not only her only caricature trait wasn't just Muslim. you
Right.
know like there were so many different things about her that made her relatable to other people, that helped educate other people at the same time about what Islam is and what she would do as a practicing Muslim. So it's like that's the kind of representation we want, and yet we never ever see it ever.
No, no. And I have
yeah
to check that out. Miss Marvel?
yeah, I mean, it's this Marvel show. It just got released, I think, last year.
Okay,
But yeah.
I gotta check it out because Marvel's been killing it. To go a little off topic, they've been killing it with the
No,
um
yeah.
the TV shows for sure.
That's true. I mean, I watched Black Panther 2 like a couple months ago. I was blown away. I was like, damn.
Amazing. I just watched it for
Yeah.
the third time. Yeah, it's so
A
good.
third, honestly, yeah.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I think so. Do you think okay, so you feel like the representation could be a lot better, of course.
Yeah.
Do you feel like do you feel like the state of Muslim America, the state of Muslim people in this country, is it improving, do you think, or do you think, or of course there's progress, but do you think it's improving or do you think it's been the same?
I think a lot more Americans now are kind of growing from the 2001 Islamophobia. I feel like it was definitely definitely a lot worse back then. And thankfully, I was never really going through it because I was born in 2001. I didn't really have to experience it as an adult or as a person.
Right.
I think definitely we've grown in so many social and political areas, not only from stereotypes about Muslims, but I feel like stereotypes about a lot of people. I feel like the early 2000s was like, ooh,
Ooh,
like
it was a different time. It was a different
it
time. So much
wasn't.
has changed in
So
20
much has
years.
changed. And I think a lot of Americans are growing beyond that. In my first law class, one of my first law classes in civil procedure, we were talking about this case where this Muslim man felt like he was being targeted and brought the case to the Supreme Court because he and hundreds of other Arab or Muslim men were arrested after 9/11 for no reason, right? So he
Wow.
tried bringing a case, and obviously the justices kind of ruled in this way where you could tell in their opinion it was like it's justified, right? And a lot of my classmates were standing up and saying like, "Hey, I didn't agree with this opinion because how could it be objective? How it's completely incorrect. It's based off of these untrue beliefs." And I was like surprised to see so many of my classmates just like stand up against Islamophobia. And I feel like nowadays, I feel like a lot of Gen Z people are standing up against these, you know, any type of discrimination, big or small, against any group. And I feel like that's that's really cool. I like seeing people who educate themselves, who try to change their family's beliefs or to move on and grow as people. And I feel like a lot of the generation now are doing that for so many different reasons, for themselves and also for the people around them.
For sure. Our generation and the generations coming after us,
Yeah,
I feel inspired because I feel like we're definitely changing the status quo. And what we tolerated in the 90s and the early 2000s, we're not tolerating now. You know, I feel like I always go back to that young woman in Florida who there was a school shooting, Parkland,
mm-hmm.
and she got up on the stage and was very passionate when she was speaking to the senators and like we need
Yeah,
change, we need to, enough is enough. And I was like, wow, like this, I don't want to say little girl, but this young woman is standing up for herself on CNN and speaking very passionately to United States senators and lawmakers.
yeah,
So I was like, that's so cool to see. You don't have to be a certain age for people to take you seriously, to stand up for what's right, to stand up for you and your friends and your schoolmates, because what happened wasn't okay. So I definitely sometimes I'm like, oh, I just want to leave planet Earth, but I sometimes I see I see young people demanding change and demanding what's right, and it's like, oh, like I have hope that
yeah.
things will look a lot different 20 years from now based on the work
It's
that's been doing right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely still hard to have hope. I'm not gonna say like every American is, moving forward. I feel like a lot of Americans, especially in our own government, you know,
Right,
do still
right.
believe and say these horrendous things about not only Muslims, but about Jewish people, about a lot of minorities. And, there's still a lot of this social and political conservatism that's so prevalent throughout America and throughout even our Senate, our House of Representatives, the Congress, it's really sad. And I feel like not a lot of people know like Islam is the second largest religion in the world. There
Wow, I
are
didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's
Wow.
also the most growing religion in the world. More people are converting to Islam every day. It's the number one growing religion in the world. It's the second largest religion in the world. There are billions, not millions, billions of Muslims on planet Earth. And
Wow.
yet, yeah, no, and yet in Europe and in the United States, not only is there incitement of hatred of Muslims, but so much ignorance about Muslims. They don't know anything. And it's like, even though there's so many of us, no one knows anything.
Shouldn't you
Everyone just
want to
thinks,
learn about the people that are in your neighborhood, in your country?
oh my God, I just saw this like article or like this video essay about how Ukrainians living in the UK are upset that they have to live next to like different types of minority groups. there was this Ukrainian woman saying, I feel scared when my son goes to school because there's a lot of Black people and there's a lot of Muslims. And it's like, huh?
Oh, oh my God.
Like, Europe, I can't even, like, I feel like Europe is like 10 times more racist when it comes to different minority groups than the United States is.
I've
I mean,
heard
it's
that.
pretty bad. It's pretty bad in the United States, but like I feel like in Europe, I
It's a
can't believe,
different
like,
it's a different beast. That's
I'm
crazy.
like,
And it's a
yeah,
culture shock for her, but it's like, okay, you're having this culture shock. You went from one country where, I don't want to say everyone looks like you because there are Black Ukrainians and Ukrainians
yeah,
of color and different religions, but you went from a country where I guess it's predominantly one thing, and you're going to a country where there's more mixing, or you're going to school where there's more mixing. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
embrace the culture shock, don't be racist, don't be xenophobic, and learn that this world, I'm sorry to break it to you, miss, but this world is majority of color. We're the
true,
majority of the world.
true.
In certain countries we're the minority, but in the world, there's three continents full of people of color. South America, Africa, and Asia. So we're definitely the majority. And I just think people have to push past that. But I heard my friend Brandon, he always says like, I think the older generation just has to die out so that um some of those ignorant beliefs can just go away. But I think
I
sadly young people have those beliefs because who are those people raising?
Yeah.
People our age, so for sure.
Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to go away, but I do think if those kids, learning those kinds of things, if they make the choice to learn and grow and be better, if more of them do that than what we would think, optimistically, and I mean, that would be great. They would
Right.
just have to learn to unlearn their
Right.
beliefs.
Unlearn
Yeah.
all that they've been taught. Back in September of 2022, Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Iranian woman, died in Tehran, Iran under suspicious circumstances. The Guidance Patrol, the religious morality police of Iran's government, arrested Amini for allegedly not wearing the hijab in accordance with government standards. The Law Enforcement Command of the Islamic Republic of Iran stated that she had a heart attack at a police station, collapsed, and fell into a coma before being transferred to a hospital. However, eyewitnesses including women who were detained with Amini, reported that she was severely beaten and that she died as a result of police brutality, which is denied by the Iranian authorities. Women in Iran have burned headscarves in anti-hijab protests following the death of Mahsa Amini, who was detained for violating hijab laws. What were your thoughts on this?
I feel like this is another one of the questions where I could talk for hours about,
Okay,
you know. Um like I was saying before, these oppressive, tyrannical, dystopian, awful governments who try to use Islam as like this gateway to basically do whatever they want. Like I'm comparing it to like basically like the Taliban in Afghanistan, just using the government to not let women get any education, which is not Islamic at all, because in Islam, all people, men and women, any person is supposed to be educated. That is like the number one thing that we put forward in Islam: to read, iqra in Arabic, to read, to be educated, to learn, to grow. That is one of the most valued tenets of Islam, that anybody has to get an education and be educated. So what that number one, that doing that is completely un-Islamic, and not only un-Islamic, but extremely unethical and horrendous. But to oppress women, to oppress children, to oppress this new generation, they doing that is not what Islam is. And may she rest in peace. I feel like social media blew up when that headline came out, and a lot of Muslims, I feel like some people were upset for the wrong reasons. Some Muslims were upset at the women who were burning headscarves. They were like, I know you're upset, but like, we shouldn't be burning hijabs. And it's like, they're not burning hijabs, like they're burning this, to them, what was being oppression. They had to be forced to dress a certain way, to do certain things, to keep their heads down, to not be able to do something else. So they're not burning hijab, they're burning headscarves. They're not burning this, like, what Islam is for and what blah blah blah, because what Islam is for is to be free. to be able to follow your religion in whatever way you please, not it being you being shackled into doing it. That's absolutely not what Islam is for. So some people, I remember on like TikTok, they were getting upset for the wrong reasons. And it's like, guys, we shouldn't be upset at people who are burning headscarf. We should be upset at people who are doing these things, like who are oppressing other people in other countries. And of course, they were upset about that. But I feel like in America, we have the leisure of just, a lot of Muslims have the leisure of being like, in one country, we're forced to not wear the hijab. Like in France, hijab is banned. You're not, like in certain
Right.
settings,
I
you
recently learned
can't
that.
you can't wear the hijab. And then like in other countries like Iran, you have to wear the hijab. And both of them are the same thing, trying to control what women do. And it's like,
Controlling
when are
women's bodies and their autonomy.
when are we gonna stop doing that? Like, please, I can't anymore.
It's
Like,
2023. I don't
women can
understand
wear
that.
hijab if they want, and if they don't want, then don't. Like, it's not the government's say, hey, you have to dress a certain way. Like, what is this, private school? Everyone should be able to wear whatever the hell they want, you
It's
know?
ridiculous. I did want to ask you, in Islam, the hijab is optional, correct? Or
So
does it
I feel like,
depend?
so in Islam, a woman is supposed to wear hijab or dress
Okay.
modestly in general. A woman is supposed to do that. But obviously, if she doesn't want to, it's not a tenet or a part of Islam to force a woman to wear it. The Muslim woman is supposed to want to do that, not only for God, but for herself. And if she doesn't want to, then that's her choice. That's it. You're supposed to. But if she can't, if she doesn't want to, or if she can't, some people have like medical conditions, where they can't have certain things on their head, then it's okay, you know? It's
Right.
it's not for someone to make you do. That's your decision, and that's between you and God, you
Right.
know?
It all goes back to that relationship.
Yeah.
It all goes back to that relationship. That's so true. It shouldn't be something man says. It's about God and Allah.
Oh man, I mean that's one of the biggest things. If there could be any takeaway from this conversation that we're having, Islam gave women rights, and and men took them away. That's what's happening, and that's what's happened.
Ooh, that's powerful.
There
That's
were like,
powerful.
yeah, thousands of years ago, women in Islam in the Middle East, they were traders, they were barters, they were going around doing whatever the hell they wanted. They were able to get educations. I think the first university ever was founded in 7th century Morocco by a Muslim woman.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of people, I feel like back then, women were able to, do certain things that were taken away by colonization, by infiltration, and by men who thought that they could do whatever they want when Islam said otherwise.
Because it all goes back to power and that greed for power, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
And I feel like everything is like rooted in misogyny and, yeah,
I
and
saw
racism and
it is. It
colonization
really
and
is. White
yeah.
supremacy. And I saw somewhere on Twitter, it was like, why did men go to war so much? Why can't they just sit and talk? You
Yeah,
know,
they're so emotional.
they're so emotional.
Yeah.
That's what it goes down to. So on Friday, February 5th, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was kicked out of the House Foreign Affairs Committee by Republicans over her past comments on Israel. She said, I am Muslim. I am an immigrant and interestingly from Africa. Is anyone surprised that I'm being targeted? Is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy? My leadership and voice will not be diminished if I am not on this committee for one term. My voice will get louder and stronger, and my leadership will be celebrated around the world as it has been. End quote. Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jan Schakowsky have passionately defended Representative Omar. Were you shocked to learn about all of this?
Um, I wasn't surprised. I mean,
Mm,
here's the thing. When it comes to anybody, not only like Rashida Tlaib, who's also a very hard-standing a defender of Palestine and Palestinian people. If a country is an ally, and Israel is a very large ally to the United States, if anyone tries to say anything and try to hold them accountable for the government for what they're doing, you're going to get crucified for that. No one's going to want you to do that, because, the United States sends billions of dollars over to the Israeli government every year from our tax money. They're very strong allies of the United Nations, and the thing is anyone, even in our government, who tries to stand up for the Palestinian people, they're labeled anti-Semitic. And I like to think of it this way. I think for our listeners, anyone who's listening, an allegory that I kind of was thinking about was, in Saudi Arabia is a country that was founded by Muslims, majority Muslim, right? You could say that it's kind of similar to Israel in the sense that it's a certain group of a religious group that created a country and created a government, right? But what sometimes Saudi Arabia in, let's say, Yemen, the Yemeni war, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's considered the largest humanitarian crisis on earth right now.
Wow.
The civil war happening there with, certain countries like the United States, the UK, and Saudi Arabia exacerbating civilian deaths and the issues going on there with missiles, with certain things. I can't get into it because it's too much.
It's very complex.
The thing is, yeah, when Saudi Arabia, right, does these things, or just any government does these things, and someone says, hey, Saudi Arabia, what you're doing is wrong, that's not Islamophobic. You're holding a country, a government, accountable for doing bad things to a certain group of people. It's not against that specific religious group. When you say, don't do that, that's bad, you can't automatically turn around and say, well, that's Islamophobic. You're saying all Muslims are bad people. Like, no, we're not. We're trying to hold a government. Exactly. And I feel like not holding a government accountable for what they're doing is anti-Semitic. You're holding them to this different standard to be able to do whatever they want and being like, well, they have this excuse, so it's fine. I feel like that's more anti-Semitic. Obviously, there are people who believe bad things about Jewish people and who believe bad things about Israeli people. That's different. Trying to hold the government accountable for this apartheid state where Palestinian people, and it's not a religious issue. There are Christian Palestinians, there are Muslim Palestinians. It's not religious. The issue is human rights. That's the problem. When a government is founded based on a settler, what's happening, the land was completely swallowed up by settlers, taken away from Palestinians who were living there for generations. That's not anti-Semitism. That's a problem. That's a human rights problem. It's a refugee crisis where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians not only had to be uprooted from their homes, but who have had to leave where they lived for generations, where they planted olive trees, where they had their culture. It's not anti-Semitic to call out how Palestinians are treated as second-class citizens in their own land. So when a representative, especially a Muslim representative, tries to call it out and say this is bad, they're going to be seen as you're speaking out of turn. You're not supposed to be doing that. And like AOC said, I saw a video of her saying how this is considered anti-Semitic. What about this other representative, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who started talking about Jewish space lasers and all these awful things about Jewish people, but trying to hold a certain government accountable for their actions is not anti-Semitic.
And no one says anything about that.
No one says anything about that.
The African Muslim woman who's speaking truth to power, essentially.
Yeah. Anyone who tries, I feel like, trying to do something like that, if they're labeled as a certain way, it's trying to discourage them from saying anything about it. And that, that's a problem. And I wish her the best of luck. I feel like in this country, like I said, things are getting better for Muslims, but for us, for there only to be one Muslim political representative in the federal world. And for her to not only, for her now to be trying to be kicked out because of her trying to stand up for human rights, and her, and there have been videos of her and of Marjorie Taylor Greene and other political representatives in the past saying really Islamophobic, racist things about her that gets swept under the rug.
No one
But,
cares.
her trying to stand up for a certain people, that's discrimination. In what way?
Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make
Exactly.
sense.
I
I
mean, I'm
hope
not surprised. I wish her the
right,
best,
right.
you know?
Not surprised. Hopefully AOC and other people can like help to fight and keep her back in. Because
Yeah.
some are saying, is it's a political tool by the Republicans. Are they mad about not, winning that red wave that they expected to happen? And it was like a red drop. Are they mad
No.
about that?
Oh my God, there were so many people on TikTok being like, but look at the state, it's all red. How is that possible? How many times do we have to go through this every year that land doesn't vote? How many times?
It's people.
Oh my God.
I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
And I try to end, with these types of conversations, I try to end on a positive note.
Mm.
So switching gears a little bit, what are some of your favorite Muslim traditions and what are some of your favorite holidays in your religion?
Well, um, actually coming up is Ramadan. It's coming up real soon.
Yes,
I
okay.
feel like I'm always half excited and half, oh my God, no coffee every year. So for people who don't really know that much, so Ramadan is a month long. It's actually a month in Ramadan. It's considered the holiest month
Uh-huh.
for Muslims, where we fast from sunrise to sunset every for 30 days in that month. So every year it changes in accordance with the lunar calendar. I think last year it started in April, the beginning
Okay.
of April, and it ended May. This year it's starting March 22nd or March 23rd. We're still trying to see where it starts based on the lunar calendar. And I think it will end sometime, late April. So it changes every year.
Okay, I
I
didn't know
I
that.
yeah, I personally cannot wait until it's in the winter, which is going to take a couple of years. So because the sun sets at like 4, so
All
we can
right.
eat, so we can eat
Shorter
sooner.
day. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, basically us fasting, not only is it for us to have an understanding for people who aren't able to eat throughout the day, people who aren't as privileged as we are. There are people around the world, not only Muslims, but many people who are homeless who don't have the means to be able to eat throughout the day or to be able to have that energy throughout the day. It's for us to have this understanding of what it's like, and also it helps you're nourishing your soul throughout the day but not your stomach. I feel like that's the main point of Islam. I'm sorry, of Ramadan, to be able to read Quran, our holy book, throughout the day, to be able to pray throughout the day, to be able to, make dua, which is like offering, I guess, trying to ask Allah for certain things, like making dua for your health and making dua for my health,
Almost like
Um,
manifesting.
it is. Yeah, that's a
That's
good
kind
way
of
to think of it.
cool.
That's a
That's
good
so
way to think
cool.
of it. It is like manifesting. Yeah, it's pretty
I
much
love that.
manifestation. So you're nourishing your soul, and you're at the end of the day, you have dinner with your family. We all sit down and break bread at the same time.
Okay.
So it's about family. It's about spirituality, and it's about your connection with God and your connection with others. And I think also, I was joking, about not having coffee, but the thing is, like, simultaneously you're happy that you're able to get into this holy month and be at your religious peak, but also you feel kind of like I'm gonna be tired again. I'm not gonna be able to have energy throughout the day. But yeah, that's one of my favorite. We also have Eid. I don't know if everyone knows what
Eid
that is.
Mubarak, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. So we have one at the end of Ramadan. It's like this huge 3-day celebration of not that it's over, but like it happens at the end. So you're able to celebrate with, with family, with other people. So it's, a very happy time. And then we have another Eid, which, celebrates. It also changes throughout the years, but we have another one too. So it's like two Christmases, you get presents in
That's
both Eids.
awesome. Is there one
Yeah.
coming up soon in the spring?
I think after Ramadan, so that's going to be like around March, I mean, sorry, May, actually not May, sorry, probably the end of April, late
End of
April.
April.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Your
Yeah.
version of Christmas. That's so cool.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
I think the only thing that made me kind of sad growing up is that I wasn't able to celebrate Christmas. I thought it was like the lights were so pretty and the trees and everything, and I was like, man, I mean, I know I don't Santa Claus isn't real, but it would be nice.
To have maybe like a
You
little
know?
Christmas tree in your dorm or somewhere, bedroom.
Yeah. I feel like Muslims and Jewish people growing up, we would just tell classmates like, yo, Santa ain't real, bro.
Yes, I
Not
remember
real.
that actually.
You know?
Like, what are you talking about? What do you
Yeah.
mean?
Also, I feel like, both religious groups, like Jewish people and Muslims, we always like just have Chinese on Christmas because there's nothing else to do. We could go to
That's
the movie
true.
theater too. Sometimes I let my family go to the movies on Christmas.
Oh, I love
Nothing
that.
else
Yeah,
is
because
open.
everything's closed.
Yeah.
That's so funny. And I
Um,
really hope that like Christmas has been so commercialized. I hope that
yeah.
like maybe this might sound capitalistic, but I hope that like your holidays can be as commercialized in a sense of like so that people know about it and it can be more
I
popular.
I mean, like in like certain countries they are, but just not over here.
Just not America.
Yeah.
That's
You
true.
know.
That's
Yeah.
true. But
I mean,
we definitely want some Eid movies and some Ramadan movies, hopefully.
I saw like actually last year for party, I went to Party City and there were like certain like decorations for Eid and for Ramadan. I actually bought this like cute little calendar that says, "Oh, this many days until Eid," or like this,
Oh,
or like Happy Ramadan, and like with lanterns. A huge symbol of Ramadan is like lanterns, like light through the night.
that's
And I
beautiful
was
that they
like,
had that in Party City.
yeah, yeah. I was like, Party City, okay,
Okay, being
we're stepping it
inclusive.
up. Yeah.
That's awesome. And my last question for you, what does being Muslim mean to you?
I feel like to me, it's to be able to have empathy and to be open-minded. I feel like obviously being Muslim to different Muslims mean so many different things. For other people, it could be, you know, in prayer, and then for others for reading the Quran. And obviously, those are the fundamental parts of Islam. But another fundamental part of Islam is donating, and you're supposed to donate at least 2% of what you have every year to poverty, to certain people who live in different conditions than you. So I feel like being able to have empathy is a really big part of Islam, because not only are you nourishing your own soul when you pray, but when you make dua for other people, you know and Ramadan is like the biggest time for that. So a lot of sometimes the du'ats, made by one person and everyone else saying like Ameen, which is like Amen for Christians. Everyone's
Right.
saying Ameen, like, may may one day, may these countries going through the most awful civil wars, may they come out and live in peace. May certain people have certain health. May they have good health going into the, coming years. May we all go to heaven, like we always try to keep each other in our minds and in our hearts. And I think that's what's really important to in Islam, to be able to, be there for yourself, but also for other people, and even pray for people that you don't know. So I
Right.
think, yeah, a lot of people just overlook that about Islam. It's like, oh, you can't drink. Oh, you can't eat pork. Oh, that sucks. But the thing is like when someone says, "I'm not drinking because I'm sober." Oh, okay, that's cool. But it's a different story when you're doing it for a religious reason. It's
It's
like,
like people will
oh,
feel bad. It's like, oh,
lame.
sorry, or lame.
Yeah. The thing is like a lot of people, there have been studies that show that, doing meditation first thing in the morning, at least for like 5 minutes, even for 5 minutes, meditating in the morning, contemplating is great for you. But when you say, oh, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I pray, people are like, whoa,
Like,
that's weird.
or why do you
Like,
pray? Why do you pray so
you
much?
pray so early. Why do you pray so early in the morning? Like it's good for you. Some people
Yes,
do certain things for certain reasons. Some people don't eat a vegan diet to keep themselves healthy. Some people do meditation to keep their souls healthy. Some people pray to keep their souls healthy. We all discipline ourselves one way or another. But when the reason for that is for God, a lot of people tend to get a little like antsy about that. Like, oh, okay,
yeah,
weird.
like, ooh, I don't get it, and it's like,
Yeah.
what?
But
No,
yeah,
yeah,
but
for sure.
in the end, doing those kinds of things is good for you. Not drinking is great for you. Even drinking a little bit is not good for you. You shouldn't be drinking at all. Like for your health, for your mental health, for your physical health, it's not great for you. But not drinking at all is good for you. I mean, I feel like a lot of the things that we're not supposed to do in certain religions, it's good for you to not do
It's
them.
actually a health benefit,
Yeah.
or a mental health benefit for sure.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I hope people watching this definitely receive what you say, and listen, and know that Islam is a very beautiful religion, and the Muslim community, they're very beautiful people, and I hope that pushes through with my little podcast. I hope that people
Me
understand
too.
that,
Yeah.
because I don't like to see all this injustice. No one likes to see this injustice, but it breaks my heart. Coming from growing up in such a diverse community, I was always so embracing of other people that were different than me. So it's always
Yeah.
strange for me to see, like, for people to see the opposite, and see people treat others poorly because they don't look like them. They don't
Hmm.
call their God the same word that they do, or they don't
Yeah.
wear the same clothes that they do. So we just need to be more embracing of each other, and be look out for one another like Islam teaches. So I hope people take that away for sure. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Iman, for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know conversations like these aren't easy, but definitely beneficial.
Yeah, of course. I'm really happy to have taken the time, and I really hope that people listening, you guys got some enjoyment, and you also were a little educated today. You got to learn some things, and hopefully you're inspired to do your own research or ask friends or anyone that you know who are Muslim, to maybe learn a little more.
Right, right. And do your research. Do your own research
Yep.
as well.
Of course.
Where can everyone follow you?
So I have an Instagram, at Iman, my name, Iman, with an extra N actually. So Iman, another N dot Elshazly, Elshazly. And I also
Awesome.
have a LinkedIn, and also, but that's not really interesting.
Connect with her there too.
um, yeah,
Awesome.
and yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I want to hear from you guys. So if you're listening to this episode right now on a podcast platform, be sure to leave a rating on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're watching this episode on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you click the notification bell up top so you're notified whenever I upload a new episode. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good one.